Good afternoon, Year 9. I've had one or two emails already this week, particularly with the work on the volume of a cylinder, especially the second page of questions. Now, the second page of questions is more difficult because quite often you have to use the formula for the volume of a cylinder and work backwards using some inverses. There is some good examples of these questions, I believe, on slide 4 and slide 5 of the lesson. So I would always encourage you to make sure you do follow the lesson before you try doing the homework. What I thought I might do for you in this video is just go through a solution to the first question in the second page, and I'll also try and do the third question. Now, bear in mind that when you load up your MyMaths questions, the numbers might be different. You'll also notice that I'm going to do this with some pen and paper, so don't expect to be able to do these questions in your head and just immediately write an answer down, because that just isn't going to work. So what we'll do is we'll look at this first question involving the tin of paint. So you can see I've already written it out. We are told that the tin of paint holds 2.5 litres. We are also told the height of the cylinder that the paint is in is 15 centimetres, and we need to work out the radius. We've also been told in the question that a litre is equivalent to 1,000 centimetres cubed. So the first thing that I'm just going to do is I'm going to just convert this 2.5 litres into centimetres cubed by timesing by 1,000. So I know the volume of the tin is 2,500 centimetres cubed. Now, if you have been following the instructions for this lesson, you will already have a good idea what the formula is now for the volume of a cylinder. And this is a formula you will need to learn. Okay, and it is pi times radius squared times the height or length of your cylinder. Okay, now we know that pi is 3.14, but I also told you in the MyMaths, they like to use the pi button to keep things accurate. Okay, so what I'm going to just do is substitute in what I do know, because I know the height of the tin is 15. Okay, so on my next line, I could write 2,500 equals pi times the radius squared times the height, which is 15. So the next step is to use some inverse operations. It's a little bit like thinking of this as an equation and solving it as an equation. I've got a times by 15, so I'm going to divide both sides by 15. And if I divide by 15, that will remove the times by 15, and I'll just be left with pi r squared. Okay, and 2,500 divided by 15 probably isn't going to be a very nice number. We'll have a quick nosy. It is 166 2/3. Okay, so all I'm going to do is write 166.66 ... just to say it's going on. What I'm not going to do is going to round that answer just yet, because that will bring in a little bit of an inaccuracy. I'll just keep that number on my calculator for in a moment's time. So that 166.666 recurring is pi times r squared. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to divide by pi. And if I divide by pi, I will just be left with what the radius squared is. Okay, so remember that number I had on my calculator? I'm now going to divide that answer by pi. Not 3.14, I'm going to use the pi button. And again, it is going to be another unpleasant decimal. 53.0516, blah, 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 blah. So here we go, 53.05, blah, 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 blah. And that must be the answer to what the radius squared is. I'm working out the radius. I need to do the inverse of that. And the inverse of that, the opposite, is the square root. So I now take my calculator one more time with that not very pleasant answer, and I'm going to do the square root of my answer. And in this question, I've got an answer of 7.2836, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to round that to 1 decimal place. So that would be 7.3. After the 2 is an 8, so round up 7.3. Okay, so that would be a solution to the first question. And you can see I've had to use inverses. But it's always really, really important in a question to make sure, and this is the same as with circles, you know whether you've got the radius, you know whether you've got the diameter given in the question, and what it is that you're working towards. Okay, if you substitute in the wrong number because you've substituted a diameter rather than a radius, that might be where you are going wrong. Okay, so I said I'd also do the third question. So let's just quickly look back at that third question. It's to do with a small cylinder. It says the small cylinder can fill the big cylinder to a height of 5 centimeters. Work out the radius of the big cylinder. Okay, one thing that I've already spotted here, this small cylinder, the 7 centimeters, is a diameter. So I'm going to have to think about that when I start working out the radius. The way that we're going to do this question is if I took the volume of that small cylinder, imagine it was filled with liquid, and I poured it into the bigger cylinder, that volume would stay the same. So that is going to be the key to working out this question. I need to work out the volume of the small cylinder and then see in the big cylinder what the radius would need to be to fill that same space. And that is then going to be quite similar to how we did that first question a moment ago. So let me just find a little bit of space and we'll have a go at this one. So again, I've just written it out already. There we go. So the small cylinder can fill the big cylinder to a height of 5. Work out the radius of the big cylinder. Okay, so I'd already said this was a diameter. So I know my radius is half of that, which is 3.5. So that is going to be quite important in a moment. So the formula then for the volume of this small cylinder is still pi times r squared times h. Pi, I will use the pi button in a moment on my calculator. The radius is 3.5, so it's 3.5 that I'm squaring, times the height, and the height is 14. So I'll work this out on my calculator. I will write down the full horrid decimal, just in case I knock it off my calculator in a minute. So it's pi button times 3.5 squared times 14. That gives me a wonderful answer of 538.7831401. Okay? And like I say, that will be the volume when I pour it into this new shape. So imagine I've poured some liquid in. It's filled it up to about there. And this is 5 centimetres tall. This is now practically identical to what we did with the tin of paint, except the volume isn't quite so nice. So I know that the volume of this is the same as the volume of the small cylinder. So I'll start with that, 538.7831401 equals pi times the radius squared, and it's the radius I'm trying to find out, times the height, and remember I know the height is 5. So let me just put those numbers in. It is pi times the radius squared times 5. And again, it's this lovely 538.783141. So, just like before, I'm going to use some inverses to see if I can get the r squared by itself. So, I'm going to divide by pi. I'm going to try and be cheeky and do it in 2 steps. And I'm going to divide by the 5. Okay, I could do that as 2 separate lines, but like I say, I'm going to save a little bit of time. So r squared is 34.3. Now you might be wondering, well, why is it no longer a horrid decimal? It's no longer a horrid decimal because we divided by pi, and that previous answer we'd multiply by pi, and that kind of cancels out that horrid decimal. So that was me dividing by 5, which was the inverse of times by 5, and it was me dividing by pi as well, the inverse of times by pi. And then if I want the radius, I need to do the square root. This probably will be a nasty answer again. Let's do the square root of 34.3, and it is 5.85666, blah, blah. So to 1 decimal place, again, we're going to be rounding up. It is 5.9, and this was in centimetres. Okay, so I hope Year 9, that helps you out a little bit with that MyMaths homework. If you want to go back now and have another go, feel free. My other suggestion is, when it comes to doing MyMaths homework, be prepared to have some paper ready. Okay, there's absolutely no way on some of these homeworks you can do it just by looking at a screen. You're going to have something to write on. If you found this really helpful, I am more than happy to make little videos to support you with your understanding. So do get in touch via email if there's things that you don't understand and this has proved helpful to you. Okay, most importantly, stay safe. I'm checking out here. Good luck and goodbye.